I had rushed out of my office as soon as I got the call from my brother that my sister-in-law had been in an accident, and my heart was pounding in my chest as I parked my car and ran into the emergency room, trying not to think about the worst scenarios while nurses pushed stretchers and doctors hurried past, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. And then I saw her lying on a bed with her arm in a cast and her head bandaged and a monitor beeping steadily, and I felt a wave of relief that she was alive, but at the same time a sharp pang of worry that she was in so much pain. And I held her hand and tried to comfort her, whispering that everything would be fine. Then I turned and saw him standing there, my husband, in a crisp shirt, looking calm and composed, and my stomach twisted as I realized he was holding a clipboard and talking quietly to a nurse, and before I could even process it, he signed some papers and the nurse nodded and walked away, and my heart skipped a beat because those were the emergency contact forms, and he had put down his name instead of mine, and I froze in shock and my mind raced with questions, because why would he do that, and what did it mean, and why had he never mentioned he had been here before I arrived? I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat, and I could only stare at the scene in disbelief, and my sister-in-law looked at me weakly and gave a small smile, unaware of the storm brewing inside me, and I wanted to ask him why, but the words refused to come out, and the silence between us was heavy and filled with secrets that I could feel but could not yet understand, and I realized that the simple act of signing a piece of paper had opened a door to a truth I was not ready to face. I stayed by my sister-in-law's side, holding her hand and trying to smile, but every glance at my husband made my chest tighten, and I could not understand why he looked so calm, as if nothing unusual was happening, and I wanted to demand answers, but I was afraid of what I might hear, and my mind raced through every possibility, and I remembered the times he had been late from work or had excuses for meetings that never seemed to exist, and now everything started to make a strange kind of sense, and I felt a bitter taste of betrayal creeping in, and I forced myself to breathe and focus on my sister-in-law, who was weakly whispering thank you, and I felt a twinge of guilt for suspecting anything while she had clearly gone through so much pain. Then he came over, pretending to smile at me, and I could see in his eyes that he knew I had noticed, and my heart sank, and he crouched slightly to check on her bandages and whispered something in her ear that made her laugh softly, and I felt a jolt of jealousy and confusion. Because why was he so intimate with her when I had been the one who thought we had an open, honest marriage? And I wanted to scream at him and shake him and demand the truth, but instead I just watched helplessly as he held her hand with the same tenderness he used to hold mine before things started to feel complicated and distant, and I realized that the hospital room was no longer just a place of healing. It was a place where secrets were quietly unraveling, and I was trapped between wanting to protect my sister-in-law and wanting to confront my husband, and my emotions collided in a storm I could barely contain. The night felt heavier than usual as I stood on the sidewalk with grocery bags cutting into my fingers. Cold air wrapped around me, but my chest felt hot, like something unseen was pressing from the inside. The apartment building looked normal, lights on, windows glowing, soft yellow cars parked quietly. Nothing looked wrong, yet everything felt wrong. That was when the old woman appeared. She came from nowhere, like the darkness itself had shaped her. Her clothes were layered and worn, her eyes sharp and knowing. She stepped into my path and caught my wrist before I could react. "Don't open the door tonight," she whispered. Her voice was low, urgent, almost shaking. "Go anywhere but home." I pulled my hand back, annoyed, confused, tired. I told her I had a long day and didn't believe in street warnings. She didn't argue. She just leaned closer and said, "Your husband is already inside." My heart skipped. "Inside where?" I asked. "Inside what?" she said softly. "Inside the lie." I laughed nervously and walked away, telling myself some people lived on drama. Still, my steps slowed. Every word echoed in my head. Already inside. The lie. My husband Mark was supposed to be on a business trip. He kissed my forehead that morning, promised to call before bed. The house should be empty. I reached the building door and hesitated. The hallways smelled different, like unfamiliar cologne mixed with something sweet. The elevator mirror showed my face, pale eyes searching. Every floor passed too slowly. My phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "Can't talk now." I felt cold. My hands shook. The doors opened on my floor. The hallway lights flickered. I walked toward our apartment. And that's when I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laugh. It came from behind my door. My heart pounded so loud I thought the neighbors could hear. The grocery bags slipped from my hands, apples rolling down the hall. I stood frozen. The old woman's voice returned in my mind. Don't open that door tonight. My hand hovered inches from the handle. Every memory of my marriage rushed in. 5 years of shared mornings, quiet dinners, promises whispered in the dark. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, but the laughter continued. Soft, intimate, familiar. I stepped back, then forward, then back again. My phone buzzed once more. Another message. Please don't come home yet. Tears burned my eyes. The truth pressed against me like a wave. I didn't open the door. Instead, I slid down against the wall and sat there breathing hard. Listening. Waiting. Because whatever was happening inside that apartment was about to change my life forever. I sat there on the cold hallway floor long after the laughter stopped. Time felt stretched, like it was testing my patience, my strength, my sanity. Every sound behind the door stabbed deeper than silence ever could. Footsteps moved inside, slow, careless, like whoever walked there belonged there. A chair scraped. Music played low, unfamiliar, romantic. My husband never played music at night. I pressed my palm to my mouth to stop myself from crying. Neighbors passed once, nodding politely, unaware that my life was cracking open beside them. I felt invisible. My phone vibrated again. Mark. Are you close? I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I stood up slowly, every muscle tense. I leaned closer to the door. I heard his voice. Low, gentle laughing. The voice he used only with me. That was when I knew. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. The old woman's warning returned again, louder, clearer. Your husband is already inside. Inside my home. Inside another life. I stepped away from the door as if it might burn me. I walked to the stairwell, my legs shaking. Every step downward felt like I was leaving something behind. Outside, the night air hit my face, sharp and unforgiving. I walked without direction. Streetlights blurred through my tears. I remembered how Mark and I met. A bookstore. Rain pouring. He offered me his umbrella and smiled like the world was simple. I trusted that smile for years. I checked into a small motel 2 blocks away. The room smelled of old soap and loneliness. I sat on the bed staring at the wall. My phone rang. I let it ring. Then again. Then again. Finally, a text appeared. Please don't overreact. We need to talk. Overreact. The word felt like a slap. I typed slowly. I know you are not alone. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Who told you? My hands trembled. An old woman. I typed. She warned me not to open the door. No reply came after that. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then another. I lay back staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. Thinking of every moment I ignored, every sign I excused, every late night. I realized something then. The warning wasn't to save my marriage. It was to save me. Because once that door opened, I would never be the same woman again. Morning came without sleep. The motel curtains glowed faint orange as the sun rose, like nothing terrible had happened. My body felt heavy, my mind louder than the traffic outside. My phone was silent. No calls. No messages. That silence hurt more than any argument could. It felt final. I showered slowly, letting the water run over me like I could wash away the night. Every memory replayed against the tiles. The laughter. His voice. The warning. I checked out before the clerk could look at me too long. I didn't want pity. I didn't want questions. I drove past my apartment building. I couldn't stop myself. Mark's car was still there. Something inside me hardened. I went to work anyway. Routine felt safer than truth. My coworkers smiled, talked about deadlines, coffee, weekend plans. I nodded, pretending to belong among normal things. At noon, my phone finally rang. Mark. I stepped outside. My voice came out steady even though my hands shook. He said we need to talk. I said I already listened last night. He sighed like I was inconveniencing him. He said it's not what you think. Those words broke something open in me. Because they were exactly what guilty people say. I asked who she was. He didn't answer at first. Then he said a friend. A friend staying in our home laughing in our bed. I laughed then. A short, sharp sound that surprised us both. I told him not to come find me. I told him I needed space. He said, "You're making this bigger than it is." I ended the call. That afternoon, a memory surfaced that I had buried. A woman I once saw leaving our building months ago. She wore my scarf. I told myself I imagined it. Now imagination had a face. When work ended, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to my sister's house. She opened the door and took one look at me and didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. That night, while she slept, I lay awake scrolling through old photos. Us smiling. Vacations. Anniversaries. Then I saw one photo I never noticed before. A reflection in a window. A woman standing close to Mark. Her hand on his arm. The date matched one of his business trips. My chest tightened. The gypsy woman appeared again in my thoughts. Not as fear, but as clarity. She didn't predict the future. She revealed the present. And suddenly I understood. The door she warned me about was not just my apartment door. It was the door to denial. And once it closed, there was no reopening it. The next morning, my sister made coffee and pretended everything was normal. I watched the steam rise and wondered how life could keep moving when mine had stopped. She finally spoke softly and said, "You can stay as long as you need." I nodded. Staying felt temporary, like everything else in my life. My phone buzzed. Mark again. This time I answered. He said he was worried. He said he didn't sleep. He said he wanted to explain. I told him explanations don't erase what I heard. I told him laughter doesn't lie. There was silence. Then he said her name. Lena. The name sat between us, heavy and real. I asked how long. He said it just happened. I laughed again because nothing just happens. He admitted she worked with him. Admitted the trips weren't always work. Admitted he didn't know how to stop. Each word felt like another door slamming shut. I asked if she knew about me. He said yes. That hurt more than I expected. I asked if she was still in my home. He didn't answer right away. Then he said no. I didn't believe him. After the call, I drove back to the apartment. Not to go inside. Just to stand outside and face it. The building looked the same. But I felt like a stranger. As I stood there, the lobby door opened. And she walked out. Lena. She was younger than me, softer than I imagined. She looked surprised to see me, then quickly embarrassed. She said my name like she knew it well. That cut deep. She tried to explain. She said she didn't plan this. She said Mark was unhappy. I stopped her. I told her unhappiness is not permission. She looked down. Then she said something that changed everything. She said he told her I was leaving. That the marriage was already over. I felt dizzy. He had rewritten our story before it even ended. She walked away, leaving me standing there holding a truth that didn't belong to me. I went upstairs alone. I unlocked the door for the first time since that night. The apartment smelled wrong. Her perfume still hung in the air. Her mug sat on the counter. Our life looked edited. I sat on the couch and cried quietly, not for him, but for the woman I was before the warning. Because that woman believed love was enough. And the woman I was becoming would never open a door without listening to her instincts again. I stayed in the apartment longer than I planned, walking from room to room like a guest in my own past. Every object carried weight. Every corner whispered lies I once trusted. I opened the bedroom closet. Her sweater hung there folded neatly. Not hidden. Not ashamed. Something inside me finally snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, clean break. I packed a bag with only what I needed. Important papers. My passport. My laptop. The things that belonged only to me. As I zipped the bag, I noticed a folder on the desk. Mark's name written across it. Inside were documents I had never seen. Bank statements. Property files. A second savings account. My heart raced. The address on the statements wasn't ours. It was across town. I realized then. The betrayal wasn't new. It was organized. I took photos of everything. Carefully, calmly. Like a woman waking up. When Mark came home that evening, I was already by the door. He looked relieved, then confused, then scared as he saw the bag. He said, "We can fix this." I said I already fixed myself. He tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. I asked about the account. The property. His face changed. He asked how I found out. I said lies leave fingerprints. He admitted the apartment was for work travel. Then admitted Lena stayed there sometimes. Then admitted he planned to move there. Planned. While still married to me. I told him not to follow me. I told him lawyers could talk instead. As I left, he said something desperate. He said, "You won't make it alone." I turned around and looked at him for the last time. I said, "Watch me." Outside, the air felt lighter. Painful but honest. That night, I returned to the motel. Not because I had nowhere else, but because I needed silence. I opened my laptop, looked at the photos, the proof, and for the first time since the warning, I felt something unexpected. Control. The lawyer listened without interrupting. Her office was quiet, clean, and sharp, just like her eyes. She looked through the documents, slowly nodding. She said, "You did the right thing by gathering proof." She said this wasn't just infidelity. This was deception. The words settled in my chest. Deception sounded bigger than heartbreak. It sounded like accountability. We talked about assets. About this second apartment. About the hidden account. She said, "Mark underestimated you." I almost smiled. That afternoon, Mark sent messages one after another. Angry. Then apologetic. Then threatening. He said lawyers would drain me. He said I was being manipulated. He said Lena meant nothing. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new bank account in my name. I changed my passwords. I reclaimed small pieces of myself. Days passed. The silence between us grew heavier. He showed up at my sister's house once. She told him to leave. At night, I dreamed of doors. Some opening. Some closing. All of them mine to choose. One evening, as I walked back from the grocery store, I saw her again. The old woman. She sat on a bench feeding birds. Like she belonged to the street. I hesitated, then sat beside her. I asked how she knew. She smiled. She said, "Some doors are louder than others. If you listen, they scream before they break." I thanked her. She waved it away. She said, "The trouble wasn't in your house. It was in your silence." That stayed with me. The court date was set. Mark finally understood I wasn't bluffing. He offered a settlement. Generous. Too generous. The lawyer smiled and said he is afraid. I signed nothing yet. Because power isn't rushing. Power is patience. And I was done opening doors in the dark. The courthouse smelled like paper polish and old decisions. I walked in steady, dressed simple, nothing borrowed, nothing hidden. Mark sat across the room, avoiding my eyes. Lena was not there. That absence spoke louder than words. When my name was called, I stood tall. Not angry. Not broken. Present. The judge listened. The lawyer spoke clearly. Every document found its moment. The second apartment. The hidden account. The rewritten story. Mark tried to explain. Tried to soften the truth. Tried to sound reasonable. But truth does not need decoration. When the judge looked at him and asked why the assets were concealed, he had no answer. I felt something shift in the room. Not victory. Release. Outside, Mark followed me. He said, "You planned this." I said no. "You did." He asked if there was still a chance. I looked at him and realized I felt nothing. No anger. No love. Just distance. The settlement came fast after that. Fair. Clean. Final. I moved into a small apartment of my own. Sunlight in the mornings. Quiet at night. One evening, I stood at my new door. Keys in hand. I remembered the warning. I smiled. Because this time, I opened the door. Without fear. Life slowed after the courtroom, like it needed time to breathe. I learned the sound of my own footsteps in the apartment. I learned how silence could feel peaceful instead of lonely. I painted the walls a soft, warm color. I bought plants I didn't know how to care for and learned anyway. Every small choice felt like reclaiming ground. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out. They said they always sensed something was wrong but didn't know how to say it. I understood that now. One afternoon, I received a message from Lena. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. She said she was sorry. She said Mark had done to her what he did to me. Promises rewritten, futures erased. I didn't reply. Closure doesn't always require conversation. That evening I saw the old woman again. This time in a small park. She smiled like she expected me. She said, "You chose yourself." I nodded. She said, "Many people hear the warning. Few listen." As I walked home, I realized the final truth. The door was never the enemy. The fear of opening it was. The final confrontation did not come with shouting or tears. It arrived quietly on a Sunday afternoon. Mark stood outside my new building holding a folder. He looked smaller than I remembered, like a man who had lost the version of himself he once controlled. I did not invite him in. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. He said he just wanted to explain. I said explanations belong to the past. He opened the folder. Inside were letters, apologies, promises, words that once would have broken me. I did not take them. He said losing me ruined him. I said losing myself nearly ruined me. That was the moment he understood. Not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't need to. He asked if I ever loved him. I said yes. Then I loved myself more. He left without another word. That night I sat by the window watching city lights flicker. I thought of the woman I was before the warning. The woman who believed silence kept peace. I whispered a thank you into the night. Not to fate, not to pain, but to the moment I chose not to open the door. Because some doors close, so your life can finally open. Months passed like soft pages turning. Not rushed, not forced. I rebuilt my routines. Morning walks, evening tea, music playing only when I wanted it. One night, as I returned home from work, a storm rolled in suddenly. Rain soaking the streetlights. Thunder loud and unapologetic. I reached my door and paused, smiling at the memory. I opened it. Inside was warmth, light, peace. No secrets waited. No laughter hid behind walls. Just me. Later that week, I passed the old street again. The bench was empty. The birds gone. She never appeared after that. Because warnings are not meant to stay. They're meant to change you. I realized then. The story was never about betrayal. Or a marriage ending. It was about listening. About trusting the voice that whispers before life screams. I no longer feared closed doors. Or open ones. Because I had learned the truth. When you choose yourself, no door can ever trap you again.